Once upon a time, in the great kingdom of Omo, there was a king named Obiora. He was loved by his people because he was kind, wise, and fair. King Obiora was not just a ruler who sat on the golden throne all day. No, he was different. He walked among his people, listened to their worries, and made sure everyone was happy. If a child was hungry, the king made sure the child ate. If a farmer's land was dry, he made sure the farmer had water. His kingdom was rich, his people were happy, and everyone thought Omu would stay this way forever. But not everyone loved the king. There was one man who wanted more power. His name was Chief Adana, and he was the king's most trusted advisor. But inside his heart, he was full of jealousy. He wanted to sit on the throne, wear the golden crown, and rule the kingdom himself. And so he made a wicked plan. It was a night of great celebration in Omu. The palace was filled with music, laughter, and dancing. The people were happy because it had been 10 years since King Obiora became their ruler. The king stood before his people, smiling as he raised the golden cup filled with palm wine. To the great land of Omu, he said, "May our people always be blessed." The crowd cheered. But deep down in the shadows, Chief Adana watched with cold eyes. He had been waiting for this moment. Then suddenly, the palace doors burst open. Soldiers in dark robes rushed in, their sword flashing in the light. The people screamed. Drums stopped beating. Women grabbed their children and ran. King Obiora turned, his heart pounding. "What is happening?" he asked. Then from behind the soldiers, Chief Adana stepped forward, smiling. "My dear king," he said, his voice full of false kindness, "your time is over." King Obiora's face darkened. "Adana, what is the meaning of this?" "This kingdom needs a strong ruler," Adana said, "and that ruler is me." The king reached for his sword, but before he could fight, two of his own guards grabbed him, the same men he trusted, the same men he had given food and gold. They pulled his golden crown from his head, tore his royal robe, and dragged him through the palace like a common thief. "People of Omu," the king cried, "do not let this wicked man take your kingdom." But no one moved, no one spoke. Fear has sliced them all. And so on that terrible night, the great King Obiora was taken afar, far away. The soldiers threw him deep into the forest, where wild animals roamed. "Let the beast eat you," one of them laughed before they left. The king sat in the darkness, alone and afraid. His body ached from the journey, his clothes were torn, and his stomach rumbled with hunger. Days passed. He walked through the thick trees searching for food, but there was nothing to eat. He drank from the rivers, slept on cold rocks, and prayed to the gods to keep him alive. The days turned into weeks, the weeks turned into months, and the mighty king became nothing more than a lonely traveler lost in the wilderness. One day, after many years, King Obiora found his way to Omu, but when he arrived, his heart broke. The kingdom was not the same. The once golden palace was now covered in dust and dirt. The market, once full of traders and happy buyers, was now empty. The people who once laughed and danced now walked with their heads low, their faces thin with hunger. It was no longer a land of joy. It was a land of sadness, and on the throne wearing the crown was Chief Adana. King Obiora clenched his fist. He had to take back his throne. But first, he needed to see if his people still had goodness in their hearts. So he became what they despised most, a beggar. Each morning, King Obiora sat in the marketplace, his hands stretched out. "Please," he whispered to the people he once ruled, "a little food, just a little." But the people turned away. "Get away from here, dirty old man," a trader spat. "You are worthless," another sneered. "Go and walk, lazy fool," a young boy laughed. King Obiora said nothing. He only walked. The same people who once cheered for him now kicked dust into his face. One evening, a rich woman passed by, her golden jewelry shining. "Madam," the king begged, "just a little food, please." The woman stopped, her nose wrinkling in disgust. "You dare not speak to me," she snapped. "You are nothing but filth." And with that, she raised her hand and struck him across his face. King Obiora tasted blood, but he did not rise. If only they knew. As the sun was setting, a small boy approached him. His clothes were torn, but his eyes were bright. "Sir," the boy said, "are you hungry?" King Obiora looked up. The boy reached into his little bag and pulled out a piece of dry bread. "Here, you can have this," he said. The beggar king took the bread, his heart heavy with gratitude. "Thank you, my son," he whispered. The boy only smiled. "My mother says kindness is the greatest treasure." And with that, he ran off. That night, the king visited an old friend, Okoro the blacksmith. "Obiora," Okoro grasped, "you are alive?" "It is me, my friend," the king whispered, "and I have come back for my throne." Soon the news spread. The true king had returned, and he was ready to fight. When the night was darkest, the loyalists struck. With swords sharpened and hearts full of fire, they stormed the palace. The battle was fierce, but in the end, justice won. Adana, seeing that he had lost, tried to escape, but he was caught. King Obiora stood before him. "You stole my throne," the king said, "but tonight Omo belongs to its ruler once more." And with one final strike, Adana was defeated. The kingdom was free. The next morning, the people gathered in the palace courtyard. King Obiora stood before them. The beggar they had mocked, the man they had scorned, gasp filled the air. He was the king? Some fell to their knees weeping, others bowed their heads in shame. The rich woman trembled. I struck you?" King Obiora looked at them all. "Let this be a lesson," he said. "Kindness is the true measure of a person's heart." From that day, no beggar in Omo was ever ignored. Would you have helped the king, or would you have mocked him? Remember, you never know who you are looking down on. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing African folktales. See you in the next story.